Alrighty, so let's continue on modelling the front of the helmet here. So I'm just going to grab this vertex here, I'm just going to extrude it down onto this corner. I'm just going to turn my subdiv off just so it runs a little bit smoother. Extrude this, bring it along the x-axis, and then just drag this down a bit on the z. And then I just need to bring this forward so it lines up. So I've just brought that first vertex in line with the corner, and then I'll just bring the one in the middle out to the front. Control R, we'll just cut another vertex in there just so we've got enough geometry to connect these together. Cool. And then, so at the front here, I'm just thinking, I reckon this will probably look a little bit nicer as like a rounded sort of surface. Not too rounded, and then this one can just be completely flat. I think it just might give a nice bit of definition to our model. So let's go ahead, I'm just going to extrude this down over to this corner. Pull it out a bit on the side view. We can bring it down to the bottom here as well. Push it out. And then we'll just bring it down to the frontmost corner at the bottom here as well. So we've got something going like that, and bring it out to the front. Then what I'm going to do, let's go ahead, let's just grab these three verts here. Extrude, I'm going to go scale Z0. I'm going to pull it down on the Z axis just until it lines up, probably a little bit further up, just with where I think there should be a crease there. And then let's go ahead, I'm going to go E to extrude. I'm going to press G, and then Shift and X, so it's going to move on everything but the X axis. And then holding down Control, I'm just going to snap it down to this bottom vertex here. So, notice how this has sort of put things in line for us without doing much work. So I'll just show you again from a different view to make it a little bit more clear what we've just done. So I'll just pull this down on the Z a bit. So G, Shift and X. So see how we're getting that cross section with the Z and Y axes here? So long as I move this, it will move only on the Z and Y axes and it won't move on the X. So then if I hold down Control and snap down to this vertex, it's just nicely put everything into position for us, and we don't need to flip between the front and side view to place things. And I'm just thinking, actually I've probably done that just a little bit wrong. I probably just need to make sure that the outside vertex is the active one, just so it lines up properly. Cool. And then I'm just going to make a very quick adjustment. I'm just going to pull these two verts out a little bit just so it matches up with the outside of the reference. Push this one in a bit for the same thing. And then just to help smooth this out, oops, I should probably actually I should merge that one at the last, merge it last. And then I'm just going to run a quick relax operation on this just to help smooth it out a bit. Cool, and then we can start to build out this flat face over here. So I'm just going to press F to fill in an edge there. Add an extra vertex, fill in the faces here, and then instead of trying to fill this in manually, what we're going to do is just go Control R, we'll just add a vertex on this bottom edge, Control R again over here, and then we can just select all of these verts and use a grid fill. Oops. That should work. Why hasn't it worked? Oh, I always love it when I do things in practice and then it doesn't work in the tutorial. What is going on? It's an even amount. There shouldn't be any overlapping verts by distance. No, there's nothing wrong. Oops, grid fill. Okay, I'm going to duplicate it. P, separate by selection, grid fill. There we go. That makes no sense. I'm just going to Shift Control J, join that back in by distance, and set that back to shade smooth. I have no idea. Blender's got a bloody mind of its own sometimes. So, but anyway, I probably showed some people how to fix an error with grid fill if you've had that before. I've done this practice a few times now, and in none of my practice runs has that happened. Anyway, let's extrude this vertex out up to this corner. So just roughly in line with this vertex up here. And we can just pull this back a bit. And you Control R to cut a vertex here. And just with this vertex selected, I'm going to go Shift and H just to isolate only this one. I'm just going to pull it out onto this corner that I can see here. And Alt H to bring everything back into view. And just push this in on the X. And I just isolated it in the viewport just because I thought it would be a little bit easier to see because it starts to kind of overlap with some of the other geometry that we've got going on around there. And then let's just go ahead, we'll cut in a vertex here, and we need 2 more along this edge to fill in the quads, and then we can just spam F a few times. Fill all of that in, and now we can go ahead, slap on some creases to have a look at this with a subdiv on. Check that on there. So that's looking nice. We've got one problem here. I'm just looking up at this sort of edge that we've just made here. It kind of bows out a little bit. I don't really like the way it looks. So let's just have a crack at fixing this. So I'm going to select this edge, and I'm going to go G-stretch. Now, that's going to flatten it out way too much, and I'm also just going to change it from spread evenly to spread, just because I want to keep the original vert positions. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to select the inner 3 edges. Just going to get a nice grazing angle on it. I'm just going to use Alt and S just to pull these out. Just trying to match the curvature of this inside edge here. And then I'll just select that middle edge. Alt and S again, just bring it out. Once again, just trying to match the curvature. And then I think I might select all of these. Just Alt and S one more time. Bring that out just a little bit more. And then I might just do a relax operation on it. So I kind of feel like that's helped just even things up a bit. I wonder, can I do a K? I might just cut across the front there, because I can sort of see just these edges here. They don't really sit in line nicely, so I'm just going to delete those edges. Oops, actually, I'm just going to select those inner 2 edges and delete the vert. That'll be an easier way to do it. And then I'll just need to dissolve that vert. Shift D, 0.55. Now I think it looks a little bit better. I think before it sort of just like bowed out a little bit too much at the front here. And by the same token, I don't really like how we're sort of getting like a bit of a divot at this edge here. So what I'll do, I'm just going to grab this vertex, double tap G, I'm just going to slide it down on its edge, press C to extend that slide and just bring it up a bit. Just there. Now it looks a little bit more flattened out. See here how you can sort of see the shading meets to a divot there, whereas this is more flat and consistent. And so then I'll just go ahead and I'll run a G stretch there, and I might actually need to do it on this as well. Nope, that seems okay. Cool, so we've retained that nice flat face there. Alright, and extrude this out to the back corner here. Sorry, let's turn the subdiv off again. So just bring this back in line. Just down to the side. Down to the corner at the front here. And I'm just going to fill that edge in. And we'll still need to adjust this up to the front. Just going to fill this in at the back. Faces the wrong orientation, so I'll just flip that out. And then what we've got, 4 verts here, so I'm just going to cut in 4 verts at the bottom. I'm going to fill in those faces, and then I'll go Control R, I'll cut a loop through the center, and then we can quite easily go and fill in the rest. And for some reason that's gone back to flat shading, so I'll just go ahead, whoops, and shade smooth here. And I'll add in another loop there just to help crease that up. Cool. Alright, so you'll probably notice there is a bit of mismatch in our model and our reference image here, and that's okay. I mean, look, we're going to try to make a higher poly version of this, so we're sort of rounding out some areas that probably were meant to be round, but just obviously hardware limitations of a 2007 model, right? So, yeah, it's not too bad. We are using our reference image for what it's intended for, a reference, you know, because if we match this one-to-one, right, we just end up with a 2007 model of the Recon helmet, so that's not what we want to do. But what we can do is we can start to infer a bit of depth here, because I don't think any of these angles are going to really help us understand just how far in we need to make the next set of extrusions. So we're just going to have to eyeball this and guess a lot of it. But remember, I'm in the same boat as you. I don't have some magical superpower for this. I am just going to guess the exact same as everybody else here. So, let's start our little guessing game. I'm just going to select this row of edges here. Just going to extrude, and I'm just going to press, just bring it into wireframe mode. I'm just going to press G. So I was just looking up to try to line this vertex up where I can't see the red anymore, and it sort of just fades into the black. So I think that probably matches up with that edge there. Then we need to sort of figure out how far to push it in on the x-axis. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a split view here. So I'm just going to have this on the front angle here, so I can just sort of push this in as I see fit. So, I don't know, I think somewhere around there maybe. Like, I kind of like the look of that angle. Obviously it's not going to change anything here, but it means it's sort of recessed back in behind our helmet. It's almost at like a, I don't know, would that be like a 45-degree angle? Maybe a little bit less steep than that. But I think that looks alright. So I've just eyeballed that. I've got as much reference as everybody else here. But the reason that's handy, I think to start with this one at least, is because now we can go ahead, we can extrude this edge. And I'm just going to have this innermost vertice as the active. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go G, Shift and Z, so move on everything but the Z axis. Hold down Control, and then I'm going to snap up to that vertex there. And so now that's pushed that in for us without adjusting the, oops, don't want to do rendered, without adjusting the Z position, so we can go ahead and do that manually now. And I kind of feel like the best Z position for this is going to be, so still with this vertex as the active, I'm going to go G, Z, hold down Control and snap it up to this vertex here. Because if we look at the reference, like technically this vertex should be back here, right? And this vertex should be up here. So they should technically be in line with one another. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this vertex, select that vertex, M, and merge it last. The reason I've done it like that is because now I believe it puts this vertex here in the correct position relative to this one with the modeling that we've done, if that makes any sense. So now we've got that going, and I'm just struggling a little bit to think about the depth here, because this is the front. We've pushed this back. I think this might actually need to come forward a bit, because I think we've inferred that this vertex here is sort of sitting along the same plane as this one. So I think we're thinking that that's at the same level of depth. But then we've also got this edge going on here, which is this edge here. And we've sort of connected that together. So we're kind of about to make a bit of a triangle here. So what I think we should do is I'm just going to subdivide this edge here. I'm going to duplicate this vertex because I want to keep that position, so I'll just hide that. I'm going to merge this vert back at the last. Okay. And I think hopefully you can see what's happened here. So instead of this edge running back here, we've now adjusted it so that it's sitting along this edge here. So see how that edge is now properly aligned there. I think I just misread the depth. So I'm just going to go Alt-H. I'm going to bring that vert back in. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to extrude this down, bring it down on the Z, just until it roughly matches up in here. So I think that allows us to fill in a face there. Yep, and then we've got 4 verts sitting here, so we can fill that in. And now I think that's got the proper depth. We might have to do a little bit of adjustment here, because I don't really like how this is sitting on the front. So what I might do is just GG, do an edge slide, push it back, press C, and sort of just push it back in on itself a little bit more. Probably just to about, might go in a bit further. About there. I think that's sort of just evened up. That's a terrible drawing. Evened up the shape of this face. Alright, so is it perfect? Definitely not. Actually, I might even need to pull this back in, sorry. I know I just pushed that out, but I might need to pull it in instead. Huh, okay. Let's just see if I can find a sweet spot somewhere. Somewhere around there, I think. I'm just trying to see, like, I'm looking at the area of this face here. I'm trying to roughly match that area up there. I think we've done an okay job there. Sorry, I think my initial one of saying to pull it back on the front view was wrong. So I think that works. And then also we kind of have have a point of reference for where this should sit. So I might just move this down. No, actually, I think we should leave it. Because I think it gets a little bit confusing because I don't think these would line up properly. Let's just test it. Just based on... it might work. If we go ahead and do a G-stretch. That kind of works. I think I might go back with what I had originally. I think it makes a little bit more sense with what we're modelling. Okay, cool. So yeah, a bit of a difference that we're getting here. We're not getting like a 90-degree angle here. Instead, we're getting a little bit more leeway on that front angle, but I don't think it's going to make a drastic difference to the overall design of our helmet here. And if anything, what we could do, almost, to make it a little bit more coherent, we could do a relax on these edges actually and sort of smooth it out a bit more. Just depends. We'll worry about that later though. I don't think now's the right time to do it while we're still blocking everything out. Sorry, I took a bit of a detour there, but hopefully what I was explaining kind of made a bit of sense. And so let's just build out this front section where we can still see the red. I don't want to go back into doing the inset for where the head hole should be. So let's just go ahead. I'm just going to grab these bottom verts, extrude. I'm going to go scale Y 0 just to flatten these out. Bring this back to this point here. And the front angle's not really going to tell me much, but I might scale it in a bit just to bring it back in on itself. And then this edge here, I kind of feel like the design we're going for, this should sort of come up. I feel like there should be a face through here sort of thing. So I might extrude this in just about there. And then I don't think the reference images are going to help, so I'm just going to go ahead, I'm just going to fill that edge in. And then I'm just going to push this in. I'm just trying to make this edge on the inside here roughly parallel with this edge on the outside, and I think we've managed to do that. So I'll just go Control R, cut in another loop, vertex. Fill those in. I think that's correct. It's kind of hard to say, but my best guess. And then I'm just going to do the same here. Just pull this back, just about there. Oh, actually, that might be a bit too far in, at least for this one. So let's just pull this back just a smidge. I'll just go there. Press F to just connect that edge there. Pull this in on itself, and once again, I'm just trying to make this inner edge parallel with this, well, pretty much with this edge here. Just pull that in. Somewhere about there, I think that's roughly parallel. It doesn't need to be perfect. And then we've got the 4 verts there, so I'll just cut in 4 verts down the bottom here as well. Fill that in. Cool. And the only reason I'm doing this is just because I want to be able to sort of complete the depth on the underside here, because then I think it should help us figure out what the depth for, oops, wrong button, everything on the inside here should be. Because that's going to be the next part we tackle, so I just want to make sure we know where to place all of that. So I'm just going to extrude this back. Just about there, fill in that face. And, oops, we need to bring this in a bit. Once again, just making it parallel with the outer edge. So I think that looks fine. And then there might be another extrusion, but for the time being, I don't want to overcomplicate the geometry too much here. So I think for the time being, I'll just leave it like that. Just crease up these edges so it starts to look nice. We'll need to crease up these ones as well if we want to look at it with a subdiv. Yeah, and so it's kind of expected that we start to see some problems in here just because that is a big pole, but we can start to, later on we can start to crease that out. Now that I'm seeing this with the subdiv, I definitely think we're going to relax this. I'll do it twice. Just, yeah, sort of curve that out a bit. I don't think it hurts the design that we don't have that 90-degree turn like the actual asset. Cool. Alright, so to round this out, what I want to do next is I want to get these little fin designs in. And alright, so let's figure out how we can get these little vent things going on in here. So at the moment I don't think we have enough depth to infer where they should sit. So I'm just going to turn the subdiv off again. And so the way I'm going to do this is let's go ahead and select this bottom edge of vert, or row vert, sorry. I'm just going to extrude it and bring it down on the z-axis, and I'm just going to look at the leftmost vert, and I'm just going to wait for it to roughly line up with where the dark and red path meet. And so this doesn't actually properly line up at the moment, but that's alright. So let's go ahead and select this vert. I'm going to go Shift and S and cursor to selected, and change our transform pivot point to the 3D cursor. Select that bottom edge again, and I'm just going to go R to rotate. And I'm looking at the the right-hand side here. I'm just going to roughly bring those back edges in line with the bottom here. Then what I want to do is I'll just press N to open up the end panel, go to the view, and in our 3D cursor, under the location, I'm just going to change the X to 0. And so now that's put our 3D cursor at the center point. And this is handy because now if we go ahead and scale, and once again I'm just looking at the back right, now that's nicely aligned our geometry with the actual reference image. And amazingly enough, based on where we placed these faces earlier, we actually go fill this last face, it actually perfectly lines up with the rest of our topology, which is really handy. And I think just one thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to go K and just cut through here because I don't really like that that's sort of a bit wobbly down on the bottom there, and I might actually the bottom seems fine, so I'll just go ahead and crease that back up. I think that just makes for a bit more of a smoother transition. And I'll just go crease up these back edges. And just while we're here, I'm not loving the distribution of faces here, so if I went ahead and check the subdiv back on, in all honesty, it's not too noticeable, but I don't really like how clumped up a lot of these faces are here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, select between these points. There. And I'm not going to run a space operation because I think it sort of distorts things a little bit too much. Let's just go with a relax operation. And actually, I think we probably can do a space operation, sorry. So I'm just going to deselect this middle loop here, and then I'll space everything else. I just didn't want to do the space on this loop because I kind of feel like it just distorts a little bit too much. But we can do a space on it. I'm just going to restrict the amount of distortion, so I'm just going to cut between these vertices, dissolve that edge, and then just space between here. So now it's like that restricted how far the space operation could move, so I think this is just a little bit more constrained and it looks a little bit nicer. And with that, we can probably, it's going to relax all of these edges here, so just relax. And I might just do something similar. I might just go ahead and space all of that. Yeah, just start to get a little bit more even distribution. Obviously, these faces at the back are still smaller than these ones here, but I think that's all right in the grand scheme of things. So, cool. Anyway, sorry, just a little bit sidetracked there. I'm good at doing that. So let's start to get these little vent shapes in. So let's go ahead. I'm going to grab this vertex. I'm just going to go back to the bounding box. And there's kind of like a little peak just up here. So I'm just going to extrude this vertex and just bring it up roughly to where I can see that. And then I think that same peak sits over here on the front view, so I'm just going to bring that out. And now you might be asking, it's like, well, shouldn't we be using this vertex here? And the answer is yes, we probably should. Though just with the way we're modeling it and the depth that we're sort of inferring, I think this makes the most amount of sense, because if we actually look at this reference, right, like where there should be a difference in depth along here, I think this all sits along the same face, like even coming up to here. I think that is all the same face. The only bit of depth is just like this, but I think even by the time that that edge there, I think it has a little bit of depth there maybe, but yeah, it's Sorry, it's probably not a great explanation, but I think the vertex, sorry, the short answer, I think the vertex that we're using here makes sense based on the way we're modeling it. May not line up with the reference image, but I think we can make it work. So then let's just grab this vertex that we've placed here. I'm just going to go extrude, bring it back on the Y, and just bringing it back to, I'll try to explain where I've brought it back to. I'm just looking, at the sort of shape that this gives off, and it sort of comes and falls back down to the back here. So I'm just trying to place that vertex somewhere roughly in line with where I think that should end up. So it's not a precise location, it's just a guess, and I'm not going to adjust that, I'm just going to pull that back on the Y. I think that will be good enough. So with having done this, I'm just going to grab these two verts here, or this edge, just double tap G, do an edge slide, and I've just brought this back up until where I can see this sort of white part intersect with the rest of the mesh, so just roughly blocking that out. It's not too important at the moment, but while we're doing that, I might also just do an edge slide here, just bring these back and just sort of block that area out, because I do know we are going to end up working with that in a bit, so that sort of just gives us a bit of pre-planning, which is handy. Then, as for these little cutouts that we've got along here, so far I'd say my vert positions line up relatively well with where these are. This one probably not so much, but I'm not going to place it in the same position here. I'm actually going to place this cutout along this edge here, so between these verts. I'm just actually going to connect these. Now it offsets it a little bit, but you'll see in a bit once we get to sort of distributing some of the topology through here, it's going to make more sense as we do it. So there is a good reason for it. I'm not just being lazy, maybe a little bit, but that's not the sole reason. And sorry, I cut in two verts at the bottom here. So I'll just go ahead, fill a face, fill another face, one more. And then at the bottom here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut an extra loop through here. I'm going to fill in a triangle, and then I'm going to fill in a face. And so we'll come back to that area in just a second. And then I'll fill in an edge between there, cut in a loop at the bottom. Oops. And then we can just fill in these last two faces. Cool. So the last thing I want to do, just before we start to do any drastic overhauls to this area, I'm just going to go Control R, cut a loop through the middle. And I just want to extend that to the end here, so just use the knife tool to cut that through. So selecting all of these edges, just bar that last one, let's just go to our front view. You can see here, and I was talking about it before, there's kind of this divot that runs through. So I want to do the same thing, but I want to bevel it to give it a bit of roundness and not just have like this really harsh cut. So I'm going to use Alt and S, and I'm looking at the backmost edge, and I'm just waiting for it to line up with the white and dark seam there, so somewhere around there. And then once I've got that into place, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete this edge. Probably sounds a bit counterintuitive, but we'll make it make sense. And then I'm just going to select the remaining edges here, Control and B, and I'm just going to do this with two segments. We don't need to go wild here. And we'll probably do it a bit small, so I'm just looking at the front here. I just don't want these to clip. So we'll probably do that a bit smaller than what we'd actually want it. I'm just going to go Control plus, get the rest of the selection, Shift H and isolate it. And then just to help fix it up, I'm going to do my favourite operation. I'm just going to select all those edges, do a space, and that's just sort of going to help distribute up the rest of the geometry there. Now, we've got a bit of a problem at the front here, but there's a rather easy way to resolve this, fortunately. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill in a quad there. Fill in another quad there. They're sort of malformed quads, but they are still quads. And then just select both of these verts, double tap G, and just do an edge slide to pull them back. So just somewhere around there. And the really cool thing about this is that this actually forms some pretty nice topology for it to be sort of like a rounded crevice. So I'll show this a little bit better if we just go ahead and crease up these edges here. So I'll just bring this subdiv on. So you can see we're sort of getting like this nice rounded shape. So it's like triangular, but also it's got a bit of roundedness to it. And we can do a little bit of clean up on it in a bit. But first of all, let's go ahead and address these cutout lines. Sorry, I want to keep that off. So let's just go ahead and select 1, 2, 3, 4. So you could argue the fact that there's probably another one at the back here, yes, but I'm just going to worry about these 4 here because I think they're the most pertinent bits of detail. Now Control B, and I'm just going to scroll down on my scroll wheel once just because we had the 2 segments from before. And I'm just going to eyeball this, so I'm just going to go somewhere around there. I think that looks good. And in having done that, I'm also just going to go ahead and delete these verts, which might seem counterintuitive because we've just undone a whole lot of our work. Don't worry, we will make that work, trust me. And then at the bottom here, I think I might just merge this back up here. Should we merge it back up to there? No, we should probably merge it down maybe. I think that might make more sense, and then we can just do knife tool, cut that through, and then we can just merge that vert at last as well. Sort of clean that area up a bit. Cool. So the next thing I want to do is I just want to go Control R. I'm just going to cut 2 loops through each of these. Oops, Control R, 2. And then select all the faces that we've just cut into the center. Using Alt and S, I'm just going to push these in a bit. A little bit further, and that just gives us that little bit of depth there. So then at the tops here, what we can do is we can just go ahead and fill in quads at the top, or just select that back edge and press F, and that will fill it in for us. And we can do the same at the bottom here. So just select those middle edges, F, and that will fill in a face for us. And let's start to put these faces back together. So I'm just going to select this edge, press F, select this vert to fill in a triangle. And then we can fill in a quad there, then another triangle there, another quad, another triangle, one more quad, one more triangle, and a final quad there. And while we're at it, let's just go ahead and let's just do some creasing. This bit will be a little bit laborious just because there is a fair bit to crease up. But don't worry, if you miss any, it's always very obvious in the subdiv which one you've missed. Do that. Select these ones. On that. The top and at the bottom there as well. Oops. And that one, Shift E 0.55. So we can have a look at that. So this is looking pretty nice now, right? Like we've got a bit of detail in here. I'm just going to turn my shrink visor off. So, you know, it's starting to come to life just a little bit more now. We're getting a little bit more detail into the helmet. But there's a glaring issue. Notice these little artifacts here. So those are less than ideal because once we texture and shade all this, that will show up quite prominently. And also I've just noticed, at least on my model, there's a gap with the visor lines there, but I'll come back and address that later. I just want to keep focus on this. So the reason we're getting this is because we have poles on our edges, which generally speaking is bad practice, and I don't advocate for it because you do get shading artifacts. But a simple fix for this, and what we're going to do, let's just go ahead, let's select all of these triangles, so just the outermost edges. We're going to subdivide these. So now what's happened is, well, actually, sorry, not much. We've sort of just truncated the size of the triangles that are leading to the edge. Sorry, there is one more step that I forgot. Let's select that middle edge of, say, just this triangle, and let's go merge at center, and do the same for the others. Merge at center, merge at center, merge at center. All right, so now what we have, at least for, you know, these edges here, is we have quads leading onto them, which means that the edges will be properly supported and you won't get that pinching anymore. Down here, obviously, we have n-gons, but that's a very easy fix, so we can just go Control R, and we can just cut that back together, Control R here as well, and just cut that back into itself. So now if we put the subdiv back on, notice those artifacts are gone, because we've got quads leading up along the edges there, and we've sort of isolated the triangles to a different area. And so I'm getting a little bit of a problem here. And I know why, because this is on a corner. Yep, this is the exception area that we sort of need to work on a bit. Cool. All right. So this area is different just because it is a corner, and we sort of want to redirect these loops out to actually support this corner. We also need a loop through the middle here, so this one is unique. So I'm just going to okay, cut that through. And so this part is interesting because we don't actually need additional loops to help support this. What we can actually do is we can redefine some of our topology here to create a rather smart solution. So I was mentioning before I don't like poles on edges, and that is true, and we've actually got a pole sitting right here, right? So we'd want to clean this up in this instance. What we can do is let's go K and let's just cut an edge between here. And let's select that edge and subdivide it. And then we'll cut another loop from that subdivided edge with that middle vert, and we'll cut that down to the middle here. And this is interesting because now what we can do is we can use the knife tool again, so we can cut from this vert up to this one here. And so you'll notice that's made a quad. So if I just dissolve that edge, we've now got a quad through here. And the same thing applies up here. So if I go K, cut this down, we've got a quad here, so we just need to dissolve that edge. And we've also got a quad there that's a little bit malformed. We could probably clean it up a little bit more. So let's just go Control R. Whoops, sorry. Let's hide that face. Control R. So we'll just cut a loop up through there. We'll just go K and we'll cut this in. So now we've got a triangle there. We can just dissolve that edge. We can cut another loop in through the back here. K again. And there we go. So now we've done a little bit of topology rearrangement, and it's nicely integrated most of the existing topology with the new details that we have. So now if we go ahead and put our subdiv back on, we've still got relatively nice shading here. I am aware of the pinching over here. We'll address that later on, just because I do know we've got some more details to cut in there, so I don't want to muck around with the topology there too much. So yeah, we've managed to make a nice solution here, and what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and relax both of those edges just to make a bit of a smoother fall off. But yeah, so there we go. We've got most of the grid detail, the sort of like vent details. Last thing I want to do before we move on to that little circular bit is I just want to select all of these top inner edges and just go double tap G, just do an edge slide, bring them down. And so you can sort of see what that's doing for us in our subdiv. So just drag those down. That one's actually become pretty flat with the actual face. I don't know why I thought to bring that up, just interesting detail. And just do the same for the bottom ones here. Just grab those, double tap G, slide them up. Just somewhere around there. Oops. And there we go. I think it just makes the detail just a little bit nicer to look at. Cool. All right, so let's jump into this because this part is definitely much harder than getting this to all work. And also I said we were going to fix this up a little bit. The only thing I really wanted to do was just relax that. And I think it just takes out a bit of the pinching there. So I think it just makes it look a little bit smoother. Anyway, so let's turn the subdiv off. Now, what I want to do for here is a little bit interesting. So let's grab these four faces here, right? Because that's roughly encapsulated that area. I'm going to go E and just drag this down on the Z a bit. I'm going to select just this top edge here, scale Z0, and then select the bottom edge, scale Z0. And so now we've just flattened each of them out. I didn't want to select the faces and flatten them out because I still want that depth and difference between those faces. So speaking of, let's grab those faces and just drag it down to the bottom just to roughly match up with our reference image here. And we're just going to grab both of the outer edges, double tap G, I'm just going to do an edge slide and just roughly make something that resembles a circular-ish shape. It definitely doesn't at the moment, it's way too blocky, but we will work on it. So to get rid of some of the blockiness, let's go ahead and select the inner and outer edges all the way along, and let's go run a relax operation. So now it's starting to look a little bit more respectable, something a little bit more like a circle shape, at least. Not quite there, but we're getting there. And I just noticed we've got back faces here, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete those because we don't need them. And this face at the back, it gets a little bit flattened out, which is actually to be expected with this design, but I'm just going to double tap G and sort of drag it out a bit, just to give it a little bit more depth than it currently has. And in doing so, we can probably also just drag this out on the y-axis, give that a little bit more depth as well. And I kind of feel that helps even out the distribution of faces along here. It's still not perfect, but we are going to add more geometry into here, so we'll fix that up in due time. Alright, so I'm going to select all of these verts here. The most important thing is selecting this vertex here last, so that becomes our active vert, and we're going to use our snapping here. And I'm going to snap this vertex back to this middle one here. So I'm going to go G, G, Y, hold down Control. And that didn't quite work the way I thought it would. Okay then. It is sector active, isn't it? It is. I don't know why that's not working the way I wanted it to. Anyway, because I'm trying to go along the y-axis. G, X, Control. There we go. Sorry. No wonder it wasn't working. Okay. Cool, so now we've pushed that back, and it's not perfect, but it's just going to give us a rough position because we will actually connect this in with the rest of the mesh over on the left here. So speaking of, let's start to add a little bit more geometry to this because this does not at all resemble a circle at the moment. So to help with this, I'm just going to delete all of these faces because I don't want to cut a million more loops up through here because we've already got enough topology through here and we've got a whole lot of cleanup that we actually still need to do. I'm just going to delete those faces, and I might just go through, and I'm just going to subdivide all of these edges, just to make that process easier. And then, you wouldn't believe it, but I'm going to do a space and relax operation here. So I'm just going to select all of these, and let's go space first, yep, and then relax. Might do one more relax, just smooth it out a little bit more. And so I kind of feel like this has almost given us the shape we want. I think we can just do with a little bit more topology, so I'm just going to cut in 2 additional loops there. Oops. Select the inner and outer edges, space, and relax. I think that's just got more topology in for us to work with, and it sort of just resembles more of a circular shape a little bit more. And interestingly, it actually sort of helps line these vert positions up a little bit better as well. And so, speaking of, I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to grab this vert, that vert, and I'm going to merge it at last. And I'm going to do the same thing here, I'm just going to merge this one at last. And so in doing that, it's probably going to distort this face a bit, so I'm actually just going to dissolve that edge just so we can get straighter connections between this part and this circular part. And I'm going to leave the bottom here for the moment, we'll worry about that probably in the next tutorial when we start to build out the rest of it and finish most of the major details up, but let's just focus on this for the time being. So, once again, I still don't want to cut all of these new loops that we've made back into our helmet, so we need to sort of come up with a bit of a better way of doing this. So, there is this detail in the middle here, right? And this is going to be a really good way for us to help understand where we can limit the amount of topology that's about to flow back up into our helmet, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try to roughly align this vert here that I've got selected and this vert here roughly with where it should be sitting relative to this. It owls it a little bit off based on our reference, but once again, that's all right because, you know, we're not strictly adhering to the reference anyway. So I'm just going to do an edge slide, pull that out. So I roughly think those are in line. So cool. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to extrude both of these verts down, just pull them down and then just go merge at center and just pull this central vert down to reach roughly the apex of this semicircle that we've got going here. And so I can connect these two because I know they're the center points. And then I've got 6 verts here and 6 verts here. So I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to cut 6 verts into this and 6 verts into this. Which will then, just like that, which will then let us nicely fill these in, bridge the gap between those areas. And then we can quite simply just select all of these inner verts, GGE, and that sort of helps us get a little bit more of a circular shape going. It's a bit deformed, but I'm just looking at the outermost vert, so these are roughly lining up with the rest of the circle there. And so what we can do after that, because now we've got a little bit more of the shape, I'm just going to select the insides, GGE, and just try to adjust that a little bit more. Might have to do the rest manually by the looks of it, because it's not really playing nice. So I'm just going to do manual edge slides on all of these. Oops, bring that down. Put that down. I did do this a different way when I practiced it, and I've completely forgotten what it was I did. So, you know, that's good. GG, I'm just going to press C to pull that one back out a bit. And then with these, I'm actually going to pull these back out so that they line up with the outer extremities of this bit of detail. And then I'm just going to go ahead and run a relax operation just to try to help smooth that out. Cool. Alright, so even though this is different from what I did earlier, the same principles are still going to apply. So, I'm just going to connect an edge between those points. Control R to add a vertex here. And we can just fill in a face between these points. And what we can see is this vert isn't really in the correct position, because then if we also connected this one down here, we can see it's not really lining up nicely. It's kind of hard to see from the front or back views. So I'm just going to pull this out a bit. So let's just go to about there. Or actually, maybe can we go G, X, snap this there? No, that doesn't work as nicely. So I'll just pull this out a bit, just roughly almost flatten it out there, not quite though. And what we want to do is I really only want to throw one more loop, well technically two more loops through here to connect to these bottom verts. So I don't want to do that just yet, but so what I can see is that I've got 4 verts, so I'm just going to go ahead, cut 4 verts through this middle edge here. So I'll just fill that in. So we'll go here, and then we can go Control R, so we can just cut an extra loop up through here, and Control R and an extra loop up through here. So we will come back and we'll adjust all of this later on, just not worried about it for the time being. And so we can go fill a quad, fill another quad, I don't need that, and fill that in. Cool, so we've got the outer extremity of this bit of detail, and we just need to get the inner bit of detail there. So easy way to do that, I'm just going to select all these faces. I'm just going to do an inset. Actually, make it easier. Let's just go ahead. I'm just going to rip these edges. Then select these, and then if you recall, we can do an inset to boundary, so I, B. And it's not really playing nice with where these verts are, so I might just actually slide everything up a little bit. Sorry, I did practice this, and I did it in a very, very different way, and I have seemingly forgotten everything I did in my practice run, so instead you're getting me make it up on the go here, unfortunately. Select these, inset to boundary. There we go, now it matches up. Cool. Now I can just select everything and merge by distance just to connect those back together. Cool. So I don't like the fact that we've got extra topology, but realistically we don't, because I can just dissolve these edges here, and what we'll do, connect this over here, and then we can just do the same over here. We can just cut this through. And we'll definitely, let's just start to do some spacing and relaxing through here, just because this is getting a little bit dense. Actually, I'm not going to do it here. I'll adjust that on its own. So I'll just space all that, relax this out. And it kind of looks like, yeah, so we've got some extra, whoops, did not want to do that. Let's just merge these at last. And I seem to have extra, yeah, okay, these aren't properly aligned. Merge at last. I don't know why that's happened, and by distance. Cool, okay. And then, so we'll need to do some more spacing out there. And then I know I want, just trying to think, I know I want an extra loop through here, because I'll show you why. I'll stop trying to explain things theoretically and I'll just do it. So let's go ahead, let's get these faces here. I'm going to go Control R, do the same thing as we did earlier, so just chuck a loop in through the middle. Alt and S, I'm just going to push this inwards. Because on the actual model there seems to be like some sort of housing for like a tube here. Why? I've got no idea. And then I'm just going to delete both of these faces here because we don't need them. I can just go F and fill in a face at the bottom here to cap these out. And then fill in those faces as well. And we'll do the same thing. Actually, no, I think we'll keep these. No, we'll slide them down a bit. I think it makes more sense. Yeah. And we can go ahead and crease these up. Sorry, I know this tutorial's been a bit all over the place. I suppose that's what I get for trying to record after work. Crease that up, and I'll need to crease these edges up as well. And we'd probably need to do it along here as well. Cool, so that's looking alright. I'm not saying, you can see the pinching here. I swear I managed to have a solution earlier that didn't require an extra loop. So I just realised something's been throwing me. I've got one too many loops here compared to how I practice this. I'm just going to go ahead and dissolve these. I don't know how I overlooked this for so long. But don't worry, dissolving those isn't too bad because we can fix this shape back up. So I'm just going to go ahead and select all these. I'm just going to run a space operation and a relax operation, smooth that back out. So that was completely throwing me for most of this. It still doesn't change the fact that we do need to add in two... Oops, I'm just going to hide these bottom faces. We need to add in two more loops through here. I thought I had a solution where you didn't need to do this, but I don't think that's the case somehow. And so, sorry, I just subdivided that middle edge. Just going to cut through the middle here. And then subdivide both of these edges. Cut these down. And then let's go ahead and dissolve that. Cut between these points, and now we've got nice quads. And then we can just do a little bit more cleanup once more with all of these edges. So I'm just going to bring this vert across. Do the same. Oops, that's hiding. Do the same over here. And I'll need to adjust these. I might just slide this one. How do I want to approach this? Let's slide these edges first. I'm going to slide these over to here to retain that edge. Press H to hide them. Select these edges, and then I'll slide these out. It will just help us not distort the curvature of the shape here, is what I'm going for. And then kind of actually need to do something similar here. So I'm just going to double tap G, slide this to the edge, hide it, and then I'm going to select these edges here, double tap G, slide these out. And I don't love what that's doing because I don't want to. I don't think I really have a choice here. So I'm going to dissolve that. I know there's doubles there, so I'm just going to go by distance to clean that up. I'll crease this back up. This is less than ideal in all honesty, but I'm going to cut another loop through here. And, you know, we were discussing it at the start of all this, that this is a fairly sort of contested thing to do because it is a self-intersecting loop. But realistically, with just the design of the helmet, that is what's happening. So not an awful lot we can do about it. We're just going to have to work with it for this project. I'm going to cut that through. And I'm just going to do something similar here. I'm just going to cut this through here as well. Oh, actually, I'll just do an edge slide. I might be able to just even this up a little bit more. No, that's not going to look nice. Actually, no, this might work. I know it's probably a little bit cut out. I might be able to do that. I want to see that that's not introducing... It's introducing a little bit of pinching, but I think we can clean it up once we start to space all this out. And we were doing all this with the main goal of trying to help space this out. Space, relax. And I just want to drag these down. Actually, I'll probably drag all three of these down at the bottom. GG, drag these down. And then I'll subsequently also drag these out. Drag those out. So that just gives us a little bit of nicer edge support. And then the final thing here, because this middle part has turned into a bit of a disaster. I'm not going to lie. But it's alright, we can fix that up. Select all these. And then I'm just going to try spacing those out. I'm going to see what happens. So let's go space. Yeah, so I don't love what that's doing there. So I might just space these. Yeah, that works. And then relax. And we don't have a lot of topology supporting all this, do we? But something tells me that might be okay. Look, if we need to add... Whoa, that really flattens that out. I don't want to do that. Space. Will the space work? Well, we still get... Yeah, we're still getting nicely supported edges doing that. Okay. Sort of helps smooth it out a bit as well. Still keeping a nice smooth design there. This is kind of peeking out a little bit, which I don't love. Might want to run a relax operation through there. And just for one measure, I'm just going to test this. I don't know if this is going to work. Okay, Control V, I'm just going to go smooth verts. Yeah, I think that'd help clean it up. So, alright, there we go. So, sorry, I know that was probably a little bit all over the place. I'm very clearly tired after work, so I probably didn't explain all that in the best way. And it didn't help that my practice run completely fell through when I was trying to do this as well. That did not help me in any capacity. I might just do just some last minute spacing here, just because I kind of feel like it's just pinching a little bit at the bottom here, and I'm not a big fan of that. Slide these up a bit. And just do one final space through there. A little bit cleaner. So yeah, look, we've got a little bit further into it. Sorry, I know that was a little bit all over the place. I can see we've sort of introduced some new errors along here, just with our spacing and distribution. There's a lot of errors up the top, just with, once again, spacing and distribution. But we can tackle all that in the next tutorial. I'm sorry this was a little all over the place. I'll probably just record the next one on the weekend, so I've got a little bit more of a clear mind to do it. But hopefully this made sense. If anything didn't, please feel free to join the Discord. I'll explain it better there. And I'll see you all in the next one.